you were, if as a context, if you were asked to say, let's choose a country, where would you pin it? Just for a purpose of design.
I mean, the thing that is closer to me, of course, is Argentina.
Yeah, so then it
Which
should be Argentina because then
yeah,
you feel strongly, you understand it, you have the
and
context.
yeah,
And then
absolutely.
I can also think in the context of Argentina, it's also there is a further distribution because there are communities that live in remote Patagonia. And so that suddenly becomes kind of a, so I think both remoteness and heart diseases is a very natural mix there. Can you walk through some of the functional requirements? And I think maybe one of the things to think a little bit about here would be is very quickly walk through the current uh, already the metrics and measures that are made. Because I can
Yeah.
imagine some things like portable heart monitors have become quite ubiquitous. And so maybe worth choosing a complementary, going beyond blood pressure, for example. Like I would
Yes,
say,
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So I think the also COVID did this thing where the oxygen monitoring using uh, the
Yeah, the finger
finger
sensor.
what is it called? Yeah, the oxygen sensor. That's become ubiquitous. And you can think, I mean, as a design, that's a phenomenal idea that really spread across the world. So, in that, is there a couple of ones where you see that are important but have not actually made it to a primary health setting?
Yes, so I would say the thing kind of as a high level idea for this is that it would be a modular kit, so you can make it more complex as you go along. So you can start with something small and then kind of try to make it more complex. So even though portable heart monitors have become very common, there's also the part that maybe these monitors are not compatible with every electrical grid situation that we have in the world. Maybe we have diverse training in
Hmm.
each of these places. What I'm thinking in Argentina, we have many rural communities or remote communities that have hospitals that are very far away. So maybe they have kind of a primary care facility nearby with non-specialized clinicians, and maybe doing something that is easier for them to actually kind of interpret, maybe through the use of machine learning, AI, you name it, any type of technique, you can kind
Hmm.
of aid decision making.
Hmm.
I think that's one of the ways to kind of improve what already exists. The other way would be to make it kind of available for communities that have low resources. So I'm thinking maybe the wind turbine that you shared. That I think that's
Hmm.
amazing because not all places have access to
Power.
electricity or the proper access to electricity. Like maybe they can burn the
Hmm.
components just by plugging it in. So I think that would be also a good thing.
Yeah.
Uh,
So I think quick set of comments. I think one thread to do would be is if you go down the direction of power and access to power, then
mhm.
that by itself is a broader thread because primarily that has utility for a much broader number of things. So I would say my feedback would be is uh, keep them as two separate tracks. It either becomes about access to power in some of these primary centers for new and products to be brought in, because then that's general. If you really work on the power issue, then it doesn't have to be heart monitors. There can be many other things. So that's very useful. Or flipping the other way around, I think from the context of heart and heart monitoring, expand on this list that you have already. So when blood pressure measurements are made, there is a huge issue in interpretation. Like, what does it mean to get a reading? Sometimes I don't have a good sense for it. Uh, there is a broad range of monitoring that's done. For example, there is a beautiful product for arrhythmia and other factors, which is continuous monitoring. And it's a little band-aid that gets put on a patient. The patient is sent home. Now that's starting to become popular in the US. But you can start thinking about more non-invasive ways where doctors could monitor the health of a heart, uh, but they have not percolated in any way and form globally. So broaden that out, and then from those, I think the key notion is I like the framework whether it's done as a kit, but I think my intuition tells me like it would be valuable to choose one single one of them and kind of push its limit.
Okay.
So that way, I think the thread that ends up happening is from an implementation point of view and from a perspective of you trying your hands at something new. It's valuable in this context of the class to sort of try creating something new because there can also be a service model that can be built in on this. Is like, let's try to build uh, a backpack that is very specifically for health monitoring. And I mean, I think I could see that there's also a bifurcation I'm seeing there, and I would choose
Mhm.
one of the ideas. Either you choose one tool and improve it, or you really hone in on we are going to create a backpack that is very specifically for heart health, and this would then have to include training for community health workers. Because I think
Yes,
the biggest
absolutely.
challenge in that would fill out on the training side of the story. Uh, okay, so I'm going to keep going. This is fantastic. I love the problem and the problem statement. And I think one thread to do is folks that are interested, now you have a contact person and try. I think either on Discord or others, try giving feedback, and especially if you're interested in this space, do a quick sit down with Francesca. And this is how we would sort of build teams. So I'm going to go faster. I see Chidubam and dialysis. So Chidubam, take it away.
So basically, I was interested in
And then I think Chidubam, I don't have access to the Excel sheet. So if Enrico, you have the access, do you want to share your screen?
I don't have access either.
Okay, Chidubam, can you give us access?
So the Google
yeah,
Doc.
I just updated.
Okay. Uh, perfect. Yes, go ahead.
So I was basically interested in dialysis because it's super, super expensive. And 80% of the people who receive dialysis care are in um, like countries like America,
Mhm.
Germany, the UK, um, and France. And then only 20% of the people who are able to actually get care for dialysis are in low and middle class communities and specifically like developing countries. So I thought it was interesting to see how possibly a cheaper filtration system could be designed that still maximized filtration, but was also capable of disposing of waste in an efficient manner. And then I think there's also a lot of opportunity for environmentally friendly design in that regard. So some of the functional requirements with that, it has to be low cost and has to be capable of being transported in a like mass transported in a cheap manner.
Mhm.
Along with the fact that in terms of functionality, it has to be able to detect, filter, and dispose, which brings me to the design parameters, which was essentially um, centered around the idea of being able to collect and incorporate feedback and being able to do that in a way that was also cost friendly, which I think is actually would be the most difficult aspect of that. Because you want to be able to identify at what rate and for how long dialysis should be performed.
Mhm.
And that sort of rapid feedback system would not be necessarily cheap to design, but or it could be. But that's I guess one shortcoming that I'm still looking at.
Mhm.
Um, and then a big one for me was accounting for the GFR score because historically it has been especially in America too, it's been very racially skewed. And it's known for boosting the rate at which, like specifically Black communities receive care, or lowering that by saying that their scores higher, and there's a bunch to that. And I think especially for a lot
Shubham, could you say a little bit more about the GFR score? What does that score imply? How is that score calculated? What does that even stand for?
yeah, so the GFR stands for glomerular filtration rate, and it basically looks at the amount of creatine in your kidneys, which is a marker for kidney health.
Hmm.
So it does that by so yeah, it basically, the way that it's ranked, I believe, is from a score of 0 to 20, maybe 0 to 100. I'd be wrong. I did this
Hmm.
a while ago. But so basically, if you're in a certain like point level, they'll say like, okay, like your kidney score is really bad. You want to go get a dialysis. But what they do is that they sort of predicated a like hypothesis based off of some generalization that someone made in the 1960s, which basically said that Black people were naturally healthier than everyone else. So
Hmm.
they would increase their GFR score by 15 points. And they were doing this up until like 2020. So if someone really, really needed dialysis, they wouldn't get it because their
I see.
GFR score was 15 points higher.
I see.
So that's something that communities are still advocating against. So I think taking that into consideration when designing something like this, especially since a lot of the communities that need cheaper care, a lot of the developing countries, have a lot of Black people in them. I think it's really important to account for that.
Yeah, I mean, I think let me just a few comments. First of all, this is absolutely fantastic. We've discussed dialysis a couple of times in the lab before, and I think one of the things that you sort of open and start with the moment that this cost range begins to be this high, suddenly all these criterias come about of who should get it and not get it. I mean, in the transplant industry, that's again the same thing that ends up happening. And so I think it hits being able to rethink this actually allows uh, you actually identified two very big problems. One is really, of course, associated with where does the cost come from? And I'll come back to the dialysis and sort of the physics and the science of dialysis in a minute. But then the other part is, of course, the score that you talked about. It doesn't have to be the only metric. There can be a completely different quantitative diagnostics around a criteria for dialysis that doesn't require, I mean, there's so much data that we now collect on a patient, and there could be a completely different metric for thinking about this GFR. And so I would say those are actually two separate problems. And it's valuable to think about. It's valuable to think about both of them, but there might be one option really is in the direction of a new diagnostic metric that performs better or is done in a manner that is allows for a better fit for who should get dialysis. And then the second part of this one is literally that dialysis itself. So can you walk me through in terms of the picture here? Where does that cost actually come from? I mean, dialysis membranes, if some of you know, they're made in bulk. So they're just, I mean, these membranes are actually, so there's something else that's going on in the design of these instruments. So anybody else wants to chime in who might have thought about dialysis, has seen dialysis operationally? Where are is that the total cost or the per visit cost? Because I know now there is also this thread of, I mean, the kind of inconvenience that associated with the weekly visits itself. So I'm curious if somebody can break down this a little bit on the cost side of the story. Yeah, I see a hand. This is
Like the
we basically after the opening we turn it into a little bit of a brainstorming. So go ahead.
Yeah, I think another cost on top of the system is you need really clean water to do the
Yeah.
dialysis. So you have to filter it enough that it can come in contact with your blood. And I think that'd be especially hard to do in like a low income country.
Yeah. That's a solved problem. There's lots of ways of doing uh yeah, the instrumentation around clean water in from a medical because medical uh, supplies already exist for it. So, saline water is injected in people around the world. So I wouldn't worry. There's supply chains around those built in. I think I'm just trying to understand uh, one thing to think about here in the Fred Park, and then this is just feedback for everybody. Try to make it more technical. So, for example, in the functionality, when we say filtration, try writing a metric down for this to say uh, what is the actual technically here it's a challenge. You're trying to remove certain class of things and you're trying to keep certain class of things. You're trying to put them back in. So I would go much more into the nitty-gritty of this to build the functional requirement. Harsh, go ahead. Harsh, can you hear us?
Yeah. So firstly, I completely agree with you on the choosing another proxy instead of GFR because that's too technical to track for a day-to-day instrument. The other thing which I feel like adds up to the cost, at least in India, is the salary which you pay to the staff who are trained to
I
do the
see.
dialysis.
So there is a
And
monitoring person.
yeah, and in most of the private intras in India,
Yeah.
the cost of operating the machine itself adds up to electricity grid.
Hmm.
Plus, while doing dialysis, there are other metrics which are regularly tracked. For example, if the blood is being taken out, then it changes the pressure of the body, and so heart attack could be one more plausible thing. So heart is regularly tracked while this
Hmm.
dialysis thing is being done.
Hmm.
So
What's
because
the
of
what's
these
the price
other
point?
examples,
What's the price point of dialysis in India, Argentina, other countries? Are there other medical frameworks where dialysis is much more affordable? It's
Um,
this is also, yeah, go ahead. Nigeria.
in Argentina, at least, there is, of course, a public health system which is completely free
Hmm.
and you can access it. But as many other countries, it is inefficient and sometimes inaccessible because it's kind of saturated by the demand.
Hmm.
And what's going on here right now, because there are some companies trying to lower the cost of dialysis and chemotherapy,
Hmm.
which are in a way similar because you have to have someone sitting somewhere connected to a machine. And what they're trying to do, which is something maybe worth looking into, is optimizing the amount of time someone needs to be in a chair connected to a
Mm.
certain machine to kind of lower the cost and ensure that as many people are going through that machine per day as you can.
I see. So process optimization rather than the machine itself. Yeah, yeah. I
Yes.
think, yeah. I mean, this is fantastic. I wish we could talk for hours just on this. So, uh, I am so excited. I'm really hoping we can build a team around this. And one thing to do for now, the Fred Parks are accessible and they're accessible to everyone. So, one expectation that I have from all of you is that you download that Fred Park and make it your own and add many things to it and put it back in the same folder. Like there should be kind of like GitHub, you take a problem and you add your context to it. You don't write it in the file that the other person has created, but to sort of fork it like GitHub. And then I think it should be possible, right, Alex, that when we are linking it here, uh, anybody can edit and say, oh, this is edited from the last version, and I've added these parameters, specific country. Try to take the heart of the problem and expand on it in a perspective or a context that you're thinking about. Okay, RNA extraction.
We do. I just want to emphasize something real quick.
Yes.
So I just want to actually generalize what something we naturally came upon, which is um, this notion of like the most like expensive component of a problem. Like in product design, there's like the
Mhm.
minimum viable product, like what's like the smallest unit that you can make to determine whether or not the entire idea is feasible. And I think for every project, it's very critical that you identify like what is the single thing where if you made this cheaper, the whole thing would be cheaper. Because as a kind of a trivial example, if you make a cheaper dialysis membrane, you're not solving the problem. And um, and also like our you know this class does kind of tend to focus on devices and tangible things, but that doesn't necessarily mean that every problem can be solved by an object. Like as we kind of discussed, there's a lot of like structural things around this, but
Yeah, I think two comments on that. So it's not true that we just focus on products. Uh, there are in the past couple of projects that we did were very specifically focused on the process. And I think it will be valuable if you end up choosing the process side of the story, to have a very good interface in a place where the current process is happening. So I think last time, for example, we picked up a problem on much of what's happening in access to toilets, for example. And then we met this incredible NGO, and then it was much easier to prototype and play with the process and get feedback on the process. So keep in mind, if it ends up being a process-oriented thread, it's valuable to have that good interface. And the other thing around this would be is uh, in the FRDPARRC, when you do the analysis, that's really what Alex just highlighted, that there is a feeling for a go, no go that allows to tell you that, this is the heart of the problem. Like what we are arriving is the general description, but now you have to say what is the most difficult thing you must tackle. Otherwise, there is no way through it. And I think you're also trying to get the biggest win. uh, in this context, we are really trying to dramatically rethink. So, if we were in the business of dialysis, making it little more affordable is somebody's day job right now. There's lots of people, companies thinking about making it a little more affordable, little more improved. I would want us to absolutely rethink and potentially, in those rare cases, make a dramatic jump. And it's perfectly okay to fail at trying it. So think of it this way, the attitude that I want us to take is rethink certain class of ideas because you are looking for a big jump, even if you fail in that context. Because of course, there's all kinds of reasons we all fail. But think of it this way. So kind of dramatically rethinking the framework is an important piece of the puzzle. And to do that, you have to get to the heart of the problem, as Alex said. So in those components and Fred parks that have complex parts, you can choose to explicitly focus on a subpart rather than the whole thing. And I think, frankly, with medical devices, some of that is all stuck in patents. The reason certain things are expensive also is that, you know, patents were filed in that space at that time, and that kind of became a monopoly. And it's useful to understand the history of dialysis, for example, like going back to some of the very first dialysis machines to see what has happened. Uh, okay, I'm seeing the RNA extraction and the link with paperfuge. Who wants to say a word? I don't see the Fred Park. Maybe that's not linked here, but anybody wants to say a word on it? Do you know who it's from? It's valuable to write your name on documents. Okay, I'm not hearing a name, so I'm gonna keep moving. Uh, hazard disposal. Ooh, that's a good one. Okay, whosoever made this one can. So please, please, please write your names. Uh, I think, uh, remember, the evaluation is only in the very end of what we actually accomplish, and you will all be evaluating yourself. So it doesn't matter who originated it first. Teresa.
Yeah, so I guess my friend park right now is a little bit more higher level. I would like to make changes to it as I like kind of narrow it down to what kind of deliverable I actually want out of the project.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess right now, the project that I'm looking at is looking at like hazardous waste disposal and specifically in terms of sharps waste. And so yeah, coming out of like healthcare settings and like hospitals, low income countries generate around like 6 kilograms of waste per hospital bed per day. And about 15% of it is considered hazardous. But there's like a lot of problems with the pipeline of disposing hazardous waste out of hospitals, especially in low income.
Teresa, do you know the answer for Stanford Hospital?
I don't. What,
Yeah.
what?
I can guarantee you that number is gonna be 1 or 2 orders of magnitude higher.
For the
But you know, one of the things is that larger hospitals have a processed incinerator on site. And so in some sense, the handling becomes easier because you have an incinerator. So the total biomass produced is probably much, much higher. But the problem being that there is an incinerator on site, which changes the game of how they leach out into the environment.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The main pipelines that are used are either like things that are on site or waste collection services that'll like come and take the waste collection containers. Like you'll see like those like waste collection containers
Yeah.
that they'll come and take, or like mail back programs and stuff like that. But in like low resource settings, they don't have a lot of that. And so a lot of like this waste just ends up in landfill, which poses a lot of risks. Like a lot of biohazardous, you can imagine, would have risks, but specifically for sharps, it can pose a risk also to like medical personnel and like the people who are handling the waste. Because if they come into contact and are accidentally like pricked by a used needle, it can increase their like that person's risk of contracting like blood transmitted diseases and stuff like that. I think it was like if like a needle stick injury from an infected needle can increase a person's risk of hepatitis B by 30%. And so there's like this need for ways of dealing with this, whether that is better education of how to sort hazardous wastes and the actual like risks involved with having it end up in the wrong place. Or also, I don't on this note, I was also thinking about like retractable needles, which can make at least some it can protect like the people who are handling the waste.
Yeah.
But it's more expensive
Yeah.
than regular needles.
Yeah. So I think a couple of points, because this is actually a project that we have done almost I would say 5 years ago. We worked on retractable needles. It's fascinating to see. I've met the person who was the first person to get the patents and WHO approvals on the first functional retractable needles that after one use cannot be reused and go back in a kind of an enclosure. You know, and I spoke to him about this, and one of the key things that came out is when manufacturing pipelines are set up, literally billions of syringes are made per year. I mean, actually, way more than billions, because we literally have to give vaccines, medicines, all kinds of things. So it's an enormous amount of capacity, and most of those manufacturers were not willing to change their entire pipeline for making things when a new design and a new patent came out. And of course, the new patent was not accessible to everybody, there was exclusivity around it. So that really didn't make an impact. And frankly, although I have read so much about retractable needle, I have never seen one in a hospital. And I go to hospitals all the time around the world. And so it's very clear that it hasn't been adopted. Uh, and, some of that might boil down to that they're harder to manufacture as well. So that's one piece of the puzzle. The second one that you brought up, which is also very interesting in the context of thinking about portable small scale incinerators. There are these larger scale incinerators that are used, but actually, there are these simpler boilers and other designs that have also been used in the past to sterilize surgical equipment. So there is that space of low cost sterilization, and I'm wondering whether in that space there is also a space for low cost portable incinerators. Knowing the fact that now, for the first time, many primary health centers actually have electricity that's starting to become available. So I think one thing I would do is I'm seeing two or three problems here again, and with the big picture, try to choose one and then do a drill down on that particular one. And I think one of the hardest thing in the retractable needle space that I remember is that the cost per needle is incredibly low. I don't know. Does anybody know the cost? What is the My intuition is it's only a couple of cents or something like that, because a syringe is only 17 cents. So the needle is roughly of the same order. So you have to think a little bit about this notion of manufacturing simplicity also associated with it. Okay, Ayan has a comment. Go ahead, Ayan.
Hi, I just wanted to ask, you mentioned that in a space like needles, it's really hard to break in because there's already well-established sort of infrastructure for manufacturing. So, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, this is kind of a problem that comes up when you're trying to come up with any sustainable alternative for any existing product or technology. So,
Mm-hmm.
in general, what would be the approaches for trying to deal with that? Because that's not really something that you can solve by necessarily making it cheaper or
Yeah.
more eco-friendly.
Yeah, I think, people are stuck in their ways, and some of that is the approach we take as inventors. To a certain extent, you have to understand that the party on the other hand is taking a risk potentially adopting this new approach. And can you somehow, I mean, we're dealing with this right now in some of the work we're doing in menstrual pads. Most of the large scale manufacturers that we have spoken to are excited about sustainable materials, but they've built the machines that process plastic in menstrual pads. So their claim is we are happy to try a new material, but you have to make your material work in our current existing machines. And so right now, literally, Anesta and Hadil in the lab, and we are really trying currently to take this biodegradable material and convert it into a form factor that is exactly what is currently used in making plastic-based menstrual pads. So it's a little bit about this compatibility, and we believe that we can actually do that. And then it would lower, there would be no extra investment for a pad manufacturer to actually jump in. So that's one approach. It's an extreme approach, but that's one way of thinking about it. The second aspects of it is, I think, the conversation with WHO was at some point of time, regulatory bodies, when they've seen such a large benefit, then regulatory bodies themselves can step in and say, no, from now onwards, what we used to previously think safe is not safe anymore, and we are changing the standard. And I mean, that's a big political move, primarily, but it has happened many a times. There are many practices in healthcare that were banned overnight because we had a better alternative. So I think it's case by case. I've thought quite a lot about the syringe issue, primarily because of the conversations with this person. And then, the third bit around that was also patents. Uh, some of the things were quite closed at that time for something so essential, and now so much time has passed. I would have thought that there might have been a better open approach, that the license is given very, very broadly to anybody who wants it. So I think,
As
yeah,
inventors, though, what would we want to keep in mind while coming up with a solution in order to hope that our thing might have better implementation or better
I think
adoptability?
a early conversation and understanding the path of how the current solutions are made at scale, and also the flow of money would be another one to understand. So you have a better sense. For example, vaccine companies have an incentive in making sure that the delivery of that vaccine is done in a manner that is safe. And you can imagine initiating and starting something that you take a sub-market that's associated, that I'm going to focus on a safe way for delivering vaccines. So at least for vaccinations, the needles that are used are a particular kind. So I think it's case by case, and sub-markets are still very large markets in this case. I mean, when we're talking about, I don't know actually. I mean, my guess is that we are upward of 5-10 billion needles per year. Must be. I just intuitively feels right. Actually, does anybody know that number? And so in that case, even if you think about, say, a quarter of that number, that's still a very large number. That would be another approach. Um, yeah, I mean, this is a very valuable question, and it'll make you realize that you have to understand in very intricate ways, the current modes of operation, even before you begin designing anything. So that's why we're sort of not starting with ideas, but problems, because the problem might lie somewhere else, and then you are kind of caught off guard because you didn't realize that. And again, no matter how much you think about it, there will still be problems that you would have not thought of that will only come later. Okay, let's do one more. I'm looking at the time right now, and I think I already see fantastic projects in everything that we have already discussed. So this would be the time to make sure that you are talking to each other in trying to choose sets of projects. Uh, let's cover one more, and then we're going to do all of them in the next class. But by the end of the next class, the goal is that everybody has a rough team and a project. So I think maybe by Friday, I will ask you all to have join in on a team. And then the people that don't have a team, then we will assign and kind of help you find something that makes sense. Okay, let's cover another one. Skin infections. Who wants to take this one?
This one's fine.
Go ahead.
I'm interested in skin infections because I'm on the wrestling team here, and like there's a bunch of infections on the mat, and usually like when there's a skin infection, like whether it's like anything from like ringworm, which isn't like that bad, to like staph infection, like we just go to our team doctor and she kind of just looks at it, will give us meds, and it's like not really that big of a deal. We just kind of stay off the mat a couple of days. But then in lower resource countries and communities, these infections are like killing people. So that like kind of got my attention. And I don't really know if I want to do like something where it's like we're preventing skin infections or it's like detecting them. So
Diagnostics. Yeah.
yeah, I'm not really sure, but I want it to be something that like is easy for people to use and they're able to like track the infection and how like bad it's getting or if it's improving like easily like on their own. Like it
Yeah.
doesn't
Yeah. So
like a
two comments. I think the first one is I love the fact of how you stumbled upon this problem. And I mean, that is fantastic because problems are all around us. And then the second thing is not last year, but last to last year, prior to Enrico's batch, I had two students who had spent time, and they were both Syrian, and they had spent time in refugee camps in Jordan. Jordan has some of the largest Syrian refugee camps. And with temperature and everything and cultural issues, skin infections and dermatology related threads accounted for more than 50% of all doctor visits. And one of the really fun thread is that Stanford, there was a dermatologist that released a database of images and a classifier for photographs and the class of infections. And then we actually took that ML model to Jordan to test it. So if we build a team around it, this would be a continuation because already there is an app that they had built, and we did some field testing just to get a sense. But I think one of the ideas around this would be is to do round two of that. Vision models have gotten so good. And actually, I mean, one of the other issues around some of this is as temperatures rise, and sun exposure in general is a much larger issue in terms of thinking about skin cancers. There is a very fine line between it just being a simple infection that get treated versus it being a precursor to a skin cancer. So it's incredibly valuable. If a team builds on it, I'll have the prior team that worked in Syria to actually join in. Take a look at their presentation itself. It's online. And one of the big challenges associated with this is also thinking a lot more about standardization because people had different phones, different illumination. One of the problems that we faced is how do we standardize the quality of images taken? But just so much can be done computationally right now that this would be a phenomenal, I would say, thread to pick up on. Um, okay, I'm seeing time as 10:30. Why don't we do this? Let's pick up more Fred Parks in the next class. Please make sure that you've put your Fred Parks in. But I think if conversations are not happening in Discord, you're missing out. So please, please, please try to give feedback to each other and use that to build teams. I think the most exciting part is when you feel you have this grand problem, but you're not alone in thinking about it. It's perfectly okay for you to not feel passionate about a Fred Park that you created. This is the time when you start feeling, and then try convincing each other that the problems that you are all thinking about are deeply important. And I mean, I think literally within a few 40 minutes or something, we covered a massive landscape. Uh, I think I need to make sure that I cover a lecture on ocean and oceanography because I'm really hoping. So, Serena, I'm looking towards you to make sure put one or two Fred Parks associated with oceanography and environmental challenges. I think they are equally valuable and important. And I think one thing I will do is maybe the first 15 minutes of my next class, I'll try to scare you guys with why our planet is doomed unless we do something about it. And frugal is the only way to get to a point where it'll be a scalable carbon-based solution. So please try to also put certain threads in that space, and then we'll pick this up next on Wednesday. Open mic, any comments, questions? Anybody stuck in the process? Are you feeling comfortable building? Oh, Foldscopes. So Amarnath, one quick question. Vaibhav, can you ping Ambika? I already spoke to her. There is a whole bunch of Foldscopes from last year already there. So she can just release them while the shipment that Shama has sent will arrive. And I think Enrico can confirm.
Yeah.
Yeah, just ping her because she already has a whole bunch of units. And then I will check with Shama to make sure that that's been shipped on our end. Uh, anybody played with foldscopes in the class? Did any of you make any observations yet? I know some of you were excited about it. Anything online that I should look at from the class yet? Um, okay. Any comments? This is open mic, just so that people have a sense of thinking about. Vedant, go ahead.
Yeah, so hello, Professor. So you
Yes.
guys were already doing, you guys have done a lot of work in malaria, and I was looking at a couple of, I was trying to come up with project ideas and trying to do Fred Parks, but some of, like, one idea that I was looking at is micro level sensing of uh, environmental data, so humidity and
Yeah.
other such factors, and basically getting and seeing how I can use that data to improve malaria forecasts. But then I did more digging, and then I realized that micro level forecasting is not going to help us as much.
Yeah.
Details that
Yeah.
already about the malaria.
Yeah, I love the framework, Vedant. So I think the go down this rabbit hole. Uh, don't worry too much early on which approach you will take. But if you look at seasonality of malaria, it's remarkable. And so I think in some sense, thinking about this and building systems that account for these data sets and making sure there is an action tied to it. I mean, there is a huge space that we've been working on in how do you really monitor what is inside the mosquitoes. So that was the discussion that I was having on the thread for dengue.
Yeah, you need
Now there
to.
is improved diagnostics, but we have to move towards ecological control. And still today, I find just spraying insecticides and other things is way too blunt. So, I mean, don't worry too much about early on in your evaluation. It's harder to predict an approach will pan out or not. But I think as long as the problem is something that resonates with you, just the bigger space here is forecasting, but we have to couple the forecasting to action. That's one of the
Yeah,
big problems that has not happened so far. That we can make predictions. There are really nice computational models for malaria, but there is no action behind it.
nice.
Francesca and then Akshaya.
I actually wanted to comment on this because Argentina has a huge dengue problem.
Mhm.
Uh, and just last year, the National Commission of Atomic Energy kind of genetically engineer these mosquitoes that are red, like bright red,
Mhm.
and so like the population knows not to kill them.
Yeah,
Um, and they basically compete and uh, kind of what
Yeah,
they do is kind of they reproduce
yeah.
and give up infertile offspring and
Yeah.
basically kind of
Is this
killing
the
the.
Wolbachia? This is the Wolbachia strain, right?
This is the I think so, yeah, but this is for Aedes aegypti kind
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
like
I think this
it's
is,
always them. It's always them, and this is the huge problem with the second strain. We already have vaccines, but not everyone has access to them.
yeah. I
Uh,
mean, dengue is a huge issue, and the program that you're discussing it's a beautiful program that's really scaled up, and it's an alternative approach to gene drives, which has a much larger problem to think about because then suddenly you are releasing a gene drive in an environment. And so it's a controlled approach. And one thing that might be useful is, I think, Francesca, share a little bit if it's happening in your local community in some sense. Share a few sets of articles because one thing that happens is we often read about approaches from far away, but
yeah.
literally on the ground, I did not know that these mosquitoes are red.
Yes,
This is,
that is so great because the campaigns are always saying like don't kill the red mosquitoes because those are the good ones. They're not gonna
yeah,
bite you. They're good. The
yeah. So I really want to see one of the red mosquitoes. Is it being released around your home or where you
Yes,
live?
they're being released everywhere because
Yeah.
we have
Can you do a full scope post about it? Catch a
yeah,
red mosquito, let's send you a full
Absolutely.
scope and you show us what this special mosquito actually looks like.
Absolutely. If I find one, I'm gonna do that for sure. And I can translate some articles. There's no problem. I can translate
Yeah,
some
I think
articles.
that would actually be very valuable. And then you and Vedant can also just do a quick call to get a
Yeah.
sense for seeing where forecasting fits into this picture. Because I think that's another very important aspect of whether we have a right set of a mindset around this. And I think Vedant, the problem that I would suggest is couple forecasting to a particular action. And whether that action happens to be the problem right now is that there's no action that happens. Okay, quick comments from Akshaya and then Pandit.
Hi, so I have a huge interest in looking into arthritis.
Mm-hmm.
So I did look into like their screening and their treatments and the different forms that exist. So in India, like there are more people that have arthritis per the research that I was able to do than the people who have diabetes. Yet diabetes has like an actual screening plan organized by several camps and campaigns and hospitals, and arthritis doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one of the issues that I recognized. I also read a paper on how over 200 people were tested with the compression gloves that exist for arthritis, and apparently those don't work. So I'm just trying to figure out what's a better avenue to look at. How do you know if you should be looking more into, like, say, diagnostic treatment, diagnostic related issues, or should you be looking into treatments? Like, what's the best way to like figure out which site to look at?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thread around this is currently the space is so large, and then you mentioned the treatments are all evolving. It's valuable to find where the bottlenecks are, and often enough, you can end up in a territory where neither of those are at a level that support a community. So neither there is a good diagnostics nor a good treatment. And then it comes down to kind of what you're actually excited about technologically as well. So I think don't make a distinction as yet and do a deeper dive until you feel uh, like, for example, you mentioned the compression devices. It's, maybe it's good way of what was the early evidence of why they worked. Because it might be that there is something in the mechanism that you recognize, that you understand. This approach is not wholly wrong. Uh, or when you can recognize certain sets of threads around. I think it's a little bit when you're doing this type of a discovery type of research, try finding cracks in the problem. And those cracks are unusual. They kind of attract you. They make you feel, oh, I think there is a there. But it's subtle. Uh, and one way of doing this would be is understanding the current standards really well. So, for example, when you write your FRDPARRC on this, try to write two FRDPARRCs that are on both the problems and see whether that helps you distinguish between one to choose. But I think for the idea is to do more number of FRDPARRCs, but it's essential to make sure that we are narrowing down so you don't bite more than you can chew. There's always, this is one of the biggest problem that we have as scientists. Uh, Okay, one last comment from Pandit.
Good morning, Professor. Am I audible?
Yes.
Professor, actually, I should start out by telling you that I'm not really part of this class, but in
Yeah.
fact, I
Can you do a
intended to.
quick intro then?
I'd love to. So,
Yes.
my name is Aryaman, and I'm studying neuroscience and philosophy at Ashoka University. And that's how I think I came to know about the course through WebHub. And
Yes.
I very much intended to fill out the form, but I turned out to be a couple of days late.
Yeah. Don't worry
So,
about it, Ariman. If you're here, you're part of the class. The choice will be when you join a team and a project, and then WebHub can get you up to speed in all kinds of things.
thank you so much, sir. In fact, I had kind of like, you know, I didn't give it further thought, but then I met Harshvardhan, and he told me
Yes.
that the course is just picking up. So if you want to talk to professor, that would be a good thing to do.
Yeah, I think
I'm
not
glad
an
I did.
issue.
Yeah.
You are right on time as long as you don't miss the team projects. I think the whole point of all of this is making sure that we are choosing uh, and actually trying to tackle specific sets of problems. So I think everything else is background, and all the lectures are recorded, and Enrico can give you a link to those sets of lectures itself. Okay,
Yeah,
I
I
have to
think.
jump to another meeting, and then I see Enrico and Alex might have to run as well. So I'm gonna run. I'll catch you guys on Wednesday. And then one thread to try to do is please, please, please make sure that you have created a Fred Park. And it is so good that you attract all the people in the class to join your team. That's the hallmark because then you have a really good team to work with. So use it as a recruitment tool. Okay, I'll catch you guys Wednesday. Bye, everyone. Bye, Alex.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thanks.
Enrico.
Bye.